Hey, Rose, what's happening? You were just in New York City for 10 days.
I loved it. That city just puts a extra little beat in my heart.
It's your spirit place.
Yeah, it's my spirit city.
So, Rose, what's in your mind today? What are you loving or not loving these days? What's going on?
I'm loving my time in New York City. Let me tell you why very briefly. One, I get a chance to hang with my kid. Two, there is not a minute of a day that if you don't want to be bored, you're not going to be bored. There's always something to do. I went to a lovely cabaret this time, which I had never done. And there was this fabulous Broadway singer, Below 54, just to give a little shout out to Below 54. And what am I not loving? I'm going to say I'm not loving two travel things right now. I'm really not loving when people listen to their videos on planes or in the airport without headsets.
Yes.
Freaking hate it. It drives me like I get this like innate rage builds. And then to a much less degree, but I'm also not loving when I go to use my travel size deodorant and it breaks and falls on the floor.
I didn't see that coming, Rose.
Just of saying, it drives me insane.
Because why? Because it's so small?
It's so small, so there's not a lot of deodorant. So you go to use your deodorant and the chunk falls out of the head.
That has happened to me.
Freaking breaks on the floor. And then you're like, oh, great. So then you're either kind of trying to mold it back in,
together.
Just long enough so you get a little deodorant and then you can get some new ones. But it's so annoying.
Rose, I've known you. I've known you for a long decades. And I just didn't see that one coming.
I was glad that after all these decades, I can still offer some surprise. How about you, Dana? What are you loving and not loving?
So this is totally random, but I got a leadership lesson by listening to Smartless the other day.
Oh, awesome.
I was listening to an oldie, but when they were interviewing Steven Soderbergh, who I adore, and all of his movies. And lo and behold, I don't think they were necessarily asking him about, I think they were just like, how do you get it all done? It's hard to make a movie. And he said this thing, and I'm going to paraphrase, but it was like, when I have a team together, he's like, I want everyone focused on the thing that we're trying to make, not focused on me.
Oh, that's super powerful.
Yeah. And then he also said this thing about problem solving. And he was just like, it's the classic, let's not look for someone to blame. Let's just think about how we work our way through this problem. And he just was like, when we hit a problem, we have to ask questions. What is going on? Why? And then we'll get to the solution. And so I just wasn't expecting, as I'm listening to Smartless, which is so much fun, to hear some cool leadership management nuggets.
Yeah, unlike, our often foil for conversation, Mr. Elon Musk, where it seems to be always focused on him. And God, wouldn't it be great for his shareholders and for SpaceX if they were talking about the deployments of Starlink versus, what he tweets that day?
Yeah, and the ketamine he had that night before. And then you actually introduced me to this phrase, which I never had heard. And the Steven Soderbergh thing just links right to it, which is this idea of big team, little me. What Steven Soderbergh just described is exactly what I think that phrase means. And very quickly, what I'm not loving is the good old bitch slap that happens in Boston. Well, not Boston, but in New England.
Oh my God.
Every freaking March, you think you're out of the woods, right? You think the down, horrible, cold part of winter is over. And then at one point during March, it just bitch slaps you with a 22-degree day and wind. And on top of it, we got, not kidding you, 18 hours straight of that cold, wintry mix of rain and sleet.
Oh, yeah. I walked in it.
You were in New York. I was just like, hey, Rose, you enjoying this lovely early spring weather?
It was horrible. Like literally, we got back to the hotel Saturday and I was with a dear friend of mine from Ireland. And he's like, I'm soaking wet. And my wife told me to never buy another coat, but I need another coat because I'm soaking wet.
Right.
But I had the umbrella with the wind and the rain. It was terrible. It was horrible Saturday. The other day, gorgeous.
March is the worst month in the Northeast.
It was the bitch slap.
Yeah, it's the good old, and you know it's going to come. But then every year, even if you've grown up here, you still hope maybe it won't. And then it does. And it's like, achoo!
I was able to come back to two lovely things. The first lovely thing was a bit better Arizona weather. The second lovely thing was the opportunity today to talk to a dear friend and former colleague, Mrs. Joyce Mullen. So, Joyce Mullen has been in technology for years, but actually started her career at Cummins Engine Company. And she has some wonderful stories from that experience that I hope she tells in today's interview. And then spent over 20 years at Dell Technologies, where she had roles as the VP and GM of OEM Solutions. And then by the time that she left, she was actually president of Global Channel, Embedded, and Edge Solutions. So you could see with the Channel, Embedded, and Edge, we worked together a lot over her time at Dell. That's where we had actually met. She's a board member at Turo. And now she is president and CEO of a solution provider named Insight.
I want to process what I'm hearing. So I think what you're saying is she's a real underachiever.
Yeah. No. Here's the other thing about Joyce. And, Joyce, I'm sure you're just dying because we're going to say some super fabulous things in the next 30 seconds. But Joyce is an amazing leader who leads from the heart, hands, and the head. And added to that is she's just a phenomenal human being, meaning she's kind and she's fun and she's great to work with and great to work for. So with that, I could not be more excited to introduce my friend and former colleague. So Joyce, CEO of Insight, tell us a little bit about the company.
So Insight has been around for a really long time and started out 30 plus years ago in a garage with founders, the Crown brothers, and they were selling disk drives out of a phone book, basically. It was a fantastic story. Anyways, grew into a really, both organically and inorganically, to a really significant reseller. And then about 10 years ago, the then CEO, Ken, and Glynis, our CFO, decided that they really wanted to work on transforming the company and make it into something, I think, less susceptible to the commoditization of hardware and licensing and stickier and more valuable to customers. So they bought a series of services companies that really set us up well for the journey that we're on now. So about a year and a half ago, we said, you know what? Technology is such that our customers are really focused on delivering outcomes with technology, and we need to help them do that. That's a combination of hardware, software, and services. And we have all those things, both because of our heritage and also because of the acquisitions we've made. And nobody gets a better customer experience or more productivity or de-risk their business without technology these days. So let's help cut through the chaos and bring all of those things to bear so that we can deliver the results that our customers are looking for with technology. And we do that on the back of many decades of experience with the biggest technology OEMs in the world. And we do that on the back of deep services expertise in the areas that are frankly the most complicated and the fastest growing areas of the market: cloud, data, AI, edge, cyber. And so we said, let's create a new category. We'll call it Solutions Integrator. And let's go figure out how to create a whole much more value for our clients, a whole much more value for our teammates in terms of development, and then a whole lot more value for our shareholders. And so that's what we're doing.
What I noticed, speaking of that, creating value, is Insight has shown up on many best employer lists over the years. Best in general, best for women, best for diversity, best for equality. I mean, that's no small thing. I'm familiar with the organizations that run those lists, if you will, and it's no small thing to get on them. So it's one thing to say from a leadership place, we want to be considered a great place to work. But it's another thing to actually create an organization top to bottom that embodies it. And so I'm just curious, how do you go from an aspiration, we want to be a great place to work, or we want to value diversity and equality, to a reality that is top to bottom?
So Dana, again, this started way before I got here. This really starts with building a culture that is purpose-driven and values-led. And if you're around Insight for 4 seconds, you know about our values. So they are hunger, heart, and harmony. And everyone, all 14,500 teammates, understand what those values are. And we work really hard to reinforce them through communication, through recognition systems. We have values awards winners that go to our sales incentive trips. It is very much a part of who we are. And frankly, especially in a tight labor market like were in a couple of years ago, it makes a big difference because, everybody wants to wake up every day and work with people they like, know, and trust, and also on work that they find is valuable, but they want to do it in a way that is consistent with their own values. So I think it is a bit of Insight's secret sauce. I knew about Insight when I was at Dell forever as a partner, and I knew about Insight values, and I couldn't say that about any other partner that I know. So it's really, I think, been very deliberate, and our CHRO, Jen Vasson, has worked very diligently with her team to make sure that we are making sure this is a great place for people with disabilities, making sure that we have really great teammate resource groups to focus on diverse talent pools who have different interests and understand what needs to change with our policies and what needs to change with our governance, and how do we think about inclusion differently when it comes to not only raises but in promotions, but also participation in development programs and things like that. So it's very much ingrained in our culture. And let me just say for a second that when I first heard, I came here and I was thinking, okay, hunger, heart, and harmony. I get hunger, I get heart, but harmony, I thought we should replace that with hustle. No one agreed with me, and they were right.
That's interesting.
And harmony is really all around. We have to define it because it can be a little misinterpreted, but it's really around including diverse opinions and getting to a better answer. And then, just like an orchestra, if we get everybody participating and knowing what we're trying to, deliver as an output, we're in much better position when everybody's playing their own instrument.
It's interesting that you use the orchestra analogy because that's why we renamed the podcast this year, as when we thought through an analogy of what it really takes to get a team aligned to produce something amazing. Number one, we had just seen the movie Maestro, and it just triggered this thought, which was a good movie, right? Which triggered this thought of, oh my gosh, an organization is like a huge orchestra. And as a manager or a leader, you have to be the maestro of bringing all that individual talent together for a much, much better outcome. So as the maestro of Insight since January of 22 to the time of this recording, sister, your stock price is up over 80%. So first of all, I knew I should have bought your stock.
Well, you should have, Rose.
I should have. I know. Just because I know Joyce forever and I knew what an amazing leader she is. Is there anything that you think from a management and leadership perspective outside of the cultural tenets that you just described that you could point to that helped deliver that growth?
Well, first of all, I think the worst thing any leader can do is get too focused on the stock price. I mean, it's never as good as you think. It's never as bad as you think. I mean, it's obviously we need to work on the things that we can control. We need to work on the things that matter to our customers. We need to work on things that matter to our teammates and the communities in which we operate. And I think if we stay focused on those things, actually the numbers take care of themselves. So when we started a couple of different things, we said, wait a second, you know what? We need a better way to understand how satisfied or not our customers are, our clients are. We call our customers clients because we do so many services for them. And what we said is we got to start by really understanding what do they think is going well, what is not going well. And then we listened and we made a bunch of investments. So number 1, 2, and 3 on that list was our capability around our e-com platform. It returned poor searches. We didn't have great detail around products, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. But the point is, we took a lot of action. We invested in a new leader in e-com. We spent a bunch of money on our e-com platform, and we just rolled that out to all of our North American customers finally across the board in February. So these are long-term investments that we have to make on the back of what are our clients telling us and where can we improve. And similarly, we made some significant investments in our services business. We had a lot of great services capability, but we were not operating it like an orchestra. And by the way, what I realized pretty quickly is even though I ran services business at Dell, it's a very different thing when you are running standalone project-based services or part of a bigger solution. And so we brought in a ton of different leaders who are services experts, who have run services businesses at scale. And that really changed the overall economics of our services business, but it also gave us insights into what we didn't know. I am a firm believer you can learn from anyone, but man, when I knew that I had I don't have great experience in services, I knew that we needed a new leader in EMEA who had that skill. And Adrian does. We needed a new leader in North America who had that skill, and Dee does. And then not only that, you get also their access to those networks, and they can help you build out a stronger team underneath them, and it goes on and on. So it all starts with building the right leadership team, I think, and we're still very much in the process of doing that. But that is such a fun job because you get to figure out, okay, I need to use your analogy, Rose. I need a better violinist, or we need to figure out how to add a horn section or whatever. And it's very fun to do that. And then if you keep your ears open and you listen carefully, then they'll help explain where your gaps are and how you can improve. And I think that's really the key to improvement. And by the way, we got a long way to go, and we're just getting started.
Well, the cool thing that you said, if I look back and I'd summarize it with one word, listened. I listened to my customers. And then the second part of the listening that some managers and leaders don't do is they hear, but they don't take action. So if you ask for the feedback, but you don't do anything with it, and we see this whether it be with customers or with internal, org health surveys, people stop giving you feedback. And when they stop telling you your problems, you lose the ability to continue to improve. So that listening was something I think that was fundamental across both your examples. And then the other one is having the understanding as a manager or leader of where your strengths and weaknesses are. And when you need to acknowledge, hey, I'm missing that skill set and that domain expertise. My current team doesn't have it. I don't have it. I've got to go bring it on board. And having the accountability, the humility, the awareness to do that is really powerful.
I want to let you two in on a real early bird deal. The stock for my independent consulting company is about 75 cents a share, and I'm willing to give you guys first run. So just we can talk about it offline. Oh, Joyce, you said obviously you joined an organization with a fabulous culture, yet you have taken the reins and you did it in the middle of the pandemic. What was your experience like joining Insight in the middle of a pandemic? How did you integrate? And I'm curious if that experience changed or didn't change your lens on how to create a positive experience for new employees.
Yeah, I mean, it was obviously quite weird. You meet everybody in there. You have no idea who's tall, who's short, right? Anyway, it was very odd. But on the other hand, it forced all of us, I think, to sort of be much more deliberate about the interactions and to try to figure out how to make the most of them. And I couldn't rely on the tools that, frankly, served me fairly well over the past 30 years. When I had to figure out how to do this when really the only option to get to know people was via video. So I feel like the step change that we have seen in terms of hybrid work is here to stay. I don't see a need, nor do I see a benefit of forcing everybody to come back to an office 5 days a week. In fact, most of us didn't really do that anyway. But I do feel like there are some areas where we really have to be more thoughtful about when should we help people accelerate and develop by forcing interactions in person. And and you could argue that maybe my kids sometimes say that, that we have all these tools and it's really not a problem, but all of them believe that they get better experience by being in person. And you learn how to read a room, right? You learn how to understand when somebody is sitting like this, and you don't even see that happen on video. Some of us have better poker faces than others, and I'm not among them. When someone says something absolutely ridiculous and it becomes very evident, but it's not so evident on video. So I think the experience was really fascinating, but I don't think it's optimal. I think we have to have some, and I worry about 20-year-olds or 25-year-olds who are trying to learn how to sell, and how are they hearing, Michael Dell calls it the casino effect, but how are they hearing somebody win over there, and how can they learn to emulate that if they're on video? You just can't. So I feel like we learned a lot. We progressed in our sophistication and understanding around how to use tools effectively. And I still feel like there's a huge benefit for our teammates to spend time with each other, and also for new teammates to get trained and get access to mentors and people who can help them develop in person.
Yeah, we had someone mention that the 2D relationship just misses that third dimension. So the 3D opportunity for those 3D relationships are really important. And then it was interesting that you brought up your kids, because I was actually going to ask you about that. As I've been doing some very unscientific, off the cuff surveying, the kids that I talk to, though the narrative is around, not, they don't want to be in the office. It's almost 100, it is 100% that they enjoy being in the office at least part of the time. And to your point, no one wants to, I think, do the 8 to 5 punch in the clock anymore, 5 days a week. If you're lucky, those are the hours. But you're missing out on, you don't know what you don't know if you're not there experiencing, seeing, interacting, watching. How do you walk over if you're a new salesperson, right? You don't even know how to fill out an expense report for your first customer meeting.
Right.
And who do you turn to and ask? You're not in the sales office. So with that, are there anything like processes or tools that you're trying to use with your new employees to help them?
Well, yeah, I mean, what we've tried to say is, and it works pretty well, although again, during the pandemic, people just lived it wherever, right? So now there's not really even anchor offices for everybody, which is fine. We're adapting to that. But we have asked all of our teammates who are individual contributors to come in two days a week. We suggest that it's somewhere between Tuesday and Thursday, just because there's more critical mass and there's more opportunities to learn. And then we ask our leaders to come in 3 days a week. So that's how we're doing it. We've certainly, as I said, improved the technology in our offices. We've improved the technology in our conference rooms. We've improved the technology that we give to all of our teammates to help with some of these things. And I think, by the way, some of that is really quite beneficial that we would not have done normally without sort of being forced to. But so it's the combination of improved tools, which, by the way, really helps with a global organization, because everyone can be a first-class citizen if we're all on video. But it also, I think it allows for that flexibility so that we can have sales teammates here understanding how to learn from slightly more seasoned teammates, or learn how to fill out an expense report, like you said. Although that whole thing has changed, Rose. People thing has completely changed.
I know.
I have a hypothesis that budget allocations are going to change, and that there's going to be more budget for pulling people together for multi-day meetings, however you want to call that, retreats, offsites, blah, blah, blah. But because you're not spending that day-to-day time as one unit. And I'm just curious how that's playing out, if at all, with Insight.
Well, here's what we've said. I mean, we've told everybody kind of the desired outcome. And some people in some offices are not doing it. So I was in an office not too long ago, and when I went there were, I don't know, 150 people there. I can tell you, because we have the data, that is not a normal occurrence. Are you really thinking of shutting the office? And I said, well, guys, the utilization of this office rounds to 0. So it's ridiculous for us and by the way, I would not be exercising my fiduciary responsibility if we keep an office that no one goes to. So I think you're exactly right, Dana. And what we said is, look, if we don't use the offices, we're going to shut them. And by the way, we might be wrong about some of those, and it might require some time later that we have to open something different or whatever. We're downsizing offices and modernizing them, making them better so that when people go in there, they are excited to be in there. And you're exactly right, Dana. We are thinking through exactly how are we going to budget for a quarterly or semi-annual or something kind of thing, so that people get together, or maybe they come to headquarters or whatever. So we're working through all those things, but I do agree there will be a shift in OpEx allocation.
We're going to pivot a little bit and talk about your own leadership journey. And we all have those stories of times something fabulous happened, or stories of a time where you screwed up and you learned something that kind of imprinted your management and leadership journey. Share one of your stories. What was one of those stories where you had a pivotal moment in a lifelong leadership learning?
So I'm going to talk about, I've told the story before, but I do feel like it was so impactful. I was working at Cummins Engine Company for really the first several years of my career. And I was running the distribution business for one of the subsidiaries of Cummins. And we were living in Belgium. I had two tiny kids and I have a great husband, but we moved there when one of them was 2 weeks old. And anyway, and I loved distribution and I love supply chain. So it was a really good fit. I complained one too many times about the poor delivery performance from the major production facility, which was in Cookeville, Tennessee. And a couple of levels of bosses up said, "Hey, well, fine. Why don't you come run this plant then?" So I thought, that's great. I've been on a plant tour one time, so I've told this story a lot, but I did not feel eminently qualified at all. So my husband, who I mentioned was great, said, "Okay, fine. Really, you want to move from Brussels, Belgium, where the restaurants and the wine are really good, to Cookeville, Tennessee, where they are not."
Thanks, honey. Thanks a lot.
At this point, we had 3 little kids, and he's a trooper. He said, "Oh, yeah, fine." So anyway, we did that, and this plant was a UAW plant, so 750-ish plus rank and file UAW teammates, and the union president was named Rocky, which was perfect. And so I didn't know anything about how to run a plant. So I walked around the plant. Here's what I know how to do. I mean, I knew how to meet everybody. I knew how to shake hands. I knew how to introduce myself. I knew how to ask them what they did. I knew how to try to get an appreciation for the culture of the place. That part was relatively clear, but I did not know a lot. And so I went to a guy named John Yoder, he'd been a plant manager for 50 years at Cummins, and he knew everything, but he was a man of very few words. So he basically said, "Joyce, I got one thing to say to you, paint the bathrooms." And I've told this story so many times, so I don't want to be too elaborate about it, but I thought, John, what in the world are you talking about, paint the bathrooms? I expected him to tell me some formula about material flow or engineering or something. Anyway, so I went back into the plant though the next day, and I went into the bathroom or the woman's room, and on the manufacturing floor, it was really dingy. It was really dirty. The mirrors were cracked. The toilet seats were cracked. I mean, it was disgusting. And so, what he meant by that was demonstrate how important the employee base is, the employees are. Show them that you care about them. And by the way, once you do that, you will learn a lot from them because they will talk to you and they will tell you what's wrong in the plant. And so that notion of putting teammates first, of figuring out how to make sure that we're respecting their contributions every single day, how that when you want to demonstrate to them that it's important for them to feel valued during their shift, right? And so anyway, so we did that, and we cleaned up those bathrooms, but Rocky was not that excited about it. So by the way, every other plant manager had started off on the 2.5 ton press and worked their way up to plant manager. So it was a little anomalous, and I was super young. But anyway, so he said, you get a girl in here, first thing she does is paint the bathrooms. Next thing you know, she'll be hanging up curtains.
Oh my God.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
So the lesson has stuck with me forever, and I think it's so true. I mean, how do you if we can figure out the magic between finding what our teammates' personal ambitions are and line those with the company's ambitions, then the magic happens. And you got to start with a lot of respect for your teammates.
Well, my dear friend Dana has made it very clear. And, we all operate this, we hope that leaders operate this way. But she often says that the job is the leadership. The numbers come from that. The job is getting the people inspired and aligned, and the rest will fall into place. And this is why she does what she does and makes an impact with all of her clients and why I'm walking in this journey now with her to try and continue to share those learnings like you just shared, Joyce, which were sometimes you just got to start with painting the bathrooms.
Yeah. And dive in even if you don't feel totally qualified.
Oh, you're right. I mean, that whole imposter syndrome thing, I had that for 2 years in that job.
Oh, for sure. But hey, I know what it's like to get ready for a board meeting. Yours starts in 3 minutes. So we just want to thank you. Thank you for spending the time with us. Good luck in the board meeting. And thank you for being an incredible role model to all leaders and especially female leaders.
And right back at you guys. I mean, it's terrific that you're doing this podcast. I love the content. I love the name. And it's great to meet you, Dana. And I obviously love Rose. So,
don't you just love Joyce? She's so practical and pragmatic.
Yeah, and I just like her energy. It's so real. And just diving right in, I thought the way she describes how they work, they lead with purpose and values, that instead of being just talking points, they actually are doing it. They've operationalized it. And I also think the values are pretty unusual. I know she didn't create them, but I still think it's worth highlighting that harmony is not your typical value. And the way she described it, that it was about everyone being able to share their point of view and everyone being able to be their full selves and play their own instruments, I think is phenomenal.
Yeah, hunger, heart, and harmony. I love that. So something that was really, and I said it during the pod, where she leans in and gives so much credit to your team. Did you note that? She respected the legacy. She called out the people that had an impact on her opinion and her thoughts by name. She gave credit to who instantiated the strategic shift in her new company. And then she acknowledged that attributes that she then instilled was the listening and the take action, which I'm sure, she didn't say it was all her, obviously, but she acknowledged that, I am building on an incredibly strong foundation established by these people. And my interpretation is I have so much respect that I need to acknowledge them by name. And I thought that was really cool. But the fact that she then says, I listened to my teams, my community, and my customers. And then we were very intentional to take action. So that really hit home for me.
So the thing that I also loved that she was so comfortable being out there with was I recognized I didn't have the core expertise needed to make our new strategy succeed. And so she went out and found the people who did. And then she, again, used that word listen. And then I listened to them about what we should do. That just shows supreme confidence and humility at the same time, right? To say, I recognize that even though I have background in a certain kind of solution and service, it wasn't what we were talking about here. And I needed to go find those experts. And I just love that she's so comfortable talking about it.
Yeah, Jim Collins talks about that in Good to Great. And he talks about getting the right people on the bus. And you have to have enough confidence in yourself to acknowledge your weaknesses and skill set gaps and fortify them with people that support those areas of need. So she was very open with that, and I loved it. So, and then we cannot end this pod without talking about painting the bathroom.
I know.
What a great story to demonstrate the impact that you as a leader and a manager can make if you, 1, understand what's important to your people, 2, take action on it so they begin to trust you, and then they will help you identify the problems and make the improvements that you need as an organization to move forward. So when all else fails, Dana, paint the bathrooms.
Yes.
And thank you for this week and your participation and listening to Maestro Mindset. Don't forget to subscribe, listen to our YouTube channel, join our LinkedIn group, and we will talk to you again next week.
Over and out.